and then we're going to get to voting, so I'd ask everyone just to be patient. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, everyone. My name is Scott. I'm here from Senator Clarence Lamb's office. He sends his regards. He's still stuck on the floor, unfortunately. I apologize. I'm a little out of breath from running over here. The bill that's before you is a local delegation bill. It's passed by the Senate delegation and then recently by the House delegation related to the Anne Arundel County Liquor Board and some concerns that different liquor store owners have brought into different members of the delegations over the years related to some potential bias that folks feel that they're receiving before the board. As passed by the House delegation, it does a couple small tweaks from what the Senate did, but in broad strokes, it expands the board, adds 2 more members to the board to just try to kind of get more diversity on the board, less power installed in one individual, creates a process to try to do some data collection around potential any racial bias that might exist in disciplinary proceedings, and then also creates a requirement that the board have a recusal policy so that if any member of the board has background knowledge about a licensee, that they would recuse themselves just to make sure everything is fair. Kind of straightforward, good government bill just to kind of address some issues that we had been hearing in the county. As I said, passed by both delegations. Hope to have a favorable report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
And you said there is a cross-file to this, correct?
There is not a cross-file, Mr. Chair.
All right. Seeing no questions, I believe that concludes this bill hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And colleagues, again, we're going to adjourn briefly and go right into a voting session. We're just waiting for all the information, so be patient.
We don't have a bill here?
You just missed it.
Oh, okay.
You're doing great, though.
I'm here, sir.
We're the voting list number 16. Do we have everybody seated? Yeah. Okay. And we do have some concurrences as well. Start with voting list number 16, please. Not everybody. Yeah, hold on. All right, colleagues, we're going to get started with voting list number 16. First bill on the list is House Bill 505.
As amended, House Bill 505 renames the Renewable Portfolio Standard to be the Clean Energy Portfolio Standard and incorporates nuclear energy into the renamed Clean Energy Portfolio Standard. The amendments just strike most of the bill except for what was just mentioned.
Move the amendment.
On the amendments, any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
On the bill as amended?
Move the bill as amended.
The bill is amended. Mark?
Define what it means with nuclear. Is it in tier 1? Is it in tier 2? Or are we creating a whole new regime?
It's being added for accounting purposes. It's not in a tier 1 or tier 2 renewable source, just so that the state is able to better account for the sources of clean energy.
I know you don't like this bill, Mark. I get it.
So there's a new category called clean energy, and it will affect nuclear in what way? I mean, I know what clean energy is, but we haven't had this before this term in terms of in the actual code. We just have
So
tier 1
the bill will
tiers.
allow for the state to track how much nuclear energy, it'll include nuclear energy in accounting for its clean energy goals, but it won't affect nuclear in any substantive way.
There's no subsidy or credit given, other than accounting purposes.
Got it. Thank you.
Delegate Pippy.
So in addition to the nuclear, what does this do for solar and offshore wind?
Nothing.
There's no change.
No.
Okay. There's no change in goals or anything like that?
You said there, I'm sorry?
There is a goal change. It says 60.5% in 2025.
Those numbers are to include nuclear into the standard, but the numbers that are specific to solar, offshore wind, tier 1 renewables, those are all the exact same.
Right.
So any number changes are purely to account for nuclear entering the standard.
So basically, the bill is including nuclear as a clean energy source, but the goals have increased dramatically for this clean energy source so that the current nuclear power plant can't reach that. It would have to be more nuclear, so.
No, so PSC, there's a clause in it that allows PSC to adjust that number based on the actual nuclear production in the state. It's not meant for nuclear not to be able to reach the goal. It's meant to account for nuclear.
Right, no, I understand that. But you would have to increase it to be unreachable in order to not have nuclear as receiving any kind of subsidy. So that's what I'm saying with respect to, okay, got it.
Yeah, but this bill has nothing to do with subsidies. We do have another bill that's going to deal with nuclear, but I'm sure you're aware.
Yes.
Jesse?
Sorry, so I'm looking at, and I apologize, was there an amendment that we just accepted? That, okay, so in the fiscal note, it talks about increases solar alternative compliance payments. Is that substantive, relevant? That was struck with that amendment, okay. And then also modifies existing processes, and that's all been struck too for the, okay. So as amended, literally the only thing it does is just adds nuclear. Okay, all right, thank you.
Doug Charkoudian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think I understand what is happening, which I understand to be, and let me know if I got this right, that we have the RPS, which doesn't change. That includes Tier 1. It includes our solar carve-out. It includes whatever is set by the PSC for offshore wind. Tier 2, which is the hydro, small hydro, and that doesn't change. And we sort of add on top of that, right now, Calvert Cliffs produces 25% of our energy, and so we just start counting that. So in the first year, we're at 35, now we're at 60, the next year we're at 38, now we're at 63, right? That's essentially what we're doing. So we're giving credit to the nuclear and calling it clean instead of just renewable. So that part of it I get. And then I'm not sure that I'm tracking what the implications then are of page 10, lines 29 to the end of that. G, subject to paragraph 2, starting in 2025, the commission shall reduce the requirements of subsection B by the percentage equal to the generation output of nuclear energy. So we're reducing the requirements because the requirements are in here and they're basically set to be equal to what it is that Calvert Cliffs currently produces. And so I'm not clear on what it is that's getting reduced in that section.
So my understanding of that section is that that would reduce, so if the nuclear generation were to go down for whatever reason or go up for whatever reason, PSC would be able to adjust the standard to reflect that new or lesser nuclear generation, but it wouldn't have an effect on the parts that are specific to the RPS as we historically know it.
So for some reason, we were to allow co-location where part of it may be taken off the grid, it would lower that number, therefore lower the bigger number as well, but not change the offshore wind carve or the solar carve-out.
Yeah, I could see that the current tier 1 offshore wind, all that looks like it's protected. I'm just trying to understand what this does. So it just can reduce it though. So let's say that Calvert Cliffs does an upgrade and is producing more, and so now they're at 17 or 20%.
It gets us closer to our goal. And now
We're just
we can reduce, but that would get us closer.
exceeding the goal. So this reduces the requirement if we have larger load without more nuclear. right? That's what this is doing? Okay. All right. Seems a little odd to me, but it doesn't seem like it's harmful, so, thank you.
Sorry, just one more question. The nuclear obviously has to be in-state, or does it include the extension cord going to Peach Bottom?
Just to clarify, you want to make clear that only nuclear in-state would count towards the goals in the standard? Yes, that's how the RPS has always worked.
Just in-state generation, solely focus on in-state generation.
Okay, so just to reiterate, does not include the extension cord to Peach Bottom when that is actually built?
Correct.
Okay.
So if the bill's been amended, I'm curious, offshore wind, under the fiscal note, the original bill modified existing processes and related requirements for qualified offshore wind? So nothing about removing statutory cost caps is not in the bill?
Any other discussion? Yes, please.
Sorry, I do think that a nuclear generating station, including all small modular reactor connected with the electric distribution grid serving the state. I don't actually know if distribution is the right word, but in the case that Delegate Fisher raised, Peach Bottom is connected to the grid that serves the state?
I mean, it's a 13-state grid, everything's connected.
Yep, but
But the
some
way
things
the
are
RPS has
directly.
always done, it's only been in-state generation.
How do you bifurcate that in?
Okay.
Doug Weibel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill states the goal is 100% clean energy. So I'm trying to figure out how that terminology works with House Bill 1035 coming up later, which is supposedly promoting not only nuclear, but also allows for gas to be constructed.
It also allows for solar.
Gas is
and
not,
battery.
and solar, but gas is not in any of the tier 1, tier 2, or nuclear. So
We don't
how does this bill jive with 1035?
It does, so that means if there were to be any gas generation, it would not count towards that goal, clean energy.
But the goal is 100%.
Of course.
So how are we building gas plants if the goal is 100% clean energy?
Because at the end of the day,
Don't those two conflict?
it's a goal. Oh, out of this bill. Oh, yeah, dang it, good. You're slick. That was struck out of this bill, too. The 100% clean energy goal has been struck.
It's still in the reprint, or the,
What page,
so there's an amendment that strikes that?
what page are you on, sir? Because page 5 of 44, line 15, it's struck out, all of it.
Well, I'm trying to pull it up here.
No, it's not that hard. This is not a hard bill.
Guys.
Go ahead, boys.
I don't have, was the amendment sent to the committee members?
Yes, the reprint was sent.
Okay.
505.
Doug Weibel, do you have the reprint?
Yeah, so what page is
Page
that?
5, middle of page, I think line 14 or 15,
Okay. Thank you.
okay? Any other questions? Doug and Aaron's. I'm sorry?
I'm in the reprint right now. and it
What
says-
page?
And I'm sorry,
What
page
page?
5, line 14, where you said to go. Line 15, I'm sorry, it says the state has a goal of achieving 100% clean and renewable energy.
I'm not sure.
I-
I'm literally reading it right here, and it's stricken. I don't know, maybe there's a
Maybe
problem.
this,
That's not the reprint.
oh, that's, I just hit reprints.
It's not the reprints.
Okay. All right. I'll trust you.
We are off and running.
We're doing great, guys. I apologize. Would you like to hold the bill?
Yes.
Bastards. All right, we will hold this bill to the next voting session. I don't know what they're looking at, because he sees it. I know, I'm not really sure. I guess there's a age thing going on here. Because it is online, it's right there, he's looking at it. And you see it too, right, Pippi?
He's got a storage connection.
All right, we'll revisit, that's fine, we'll revisit it. Let the grandpas get caught up. We'll come back around, maybe see if we can do it. I'm joking, by the way, for the sensitive people, Steve. We'll move on to the next bill. We'll try and come back around, guys. I do want you to have time to at least peruse it. Next bill is House Bill 957.
House Bill 957, we are secondary on this bill. This bill establishes state residency requirements for apprentices on state contracts. The Maryland Department of Labor is responsible for enforcing the bill's requirements, and any cost incurred to administer the bill must be paid from the State Apprenticeship and Training Fund.
Move favorable. Oh, I'm sorry.
The amendments limit the application of the bill to certain projects and alter definitions and limit applicable residency requirements.
Move the amendments.
On the amendments, any discussion?
Yeah.
Steve?
It says that, in the bill, it says something about they have to live within Maryland, a certain percentage. I have a lot of people live up in Upper County, upper part of the state. That's gonna impact them, I would assume, because a lot of their members.
We've limited certain projects for just that matter, and I will say that, again, the goal is when you're using Maryland dollars for state projects, when you can, you should hire Marylanders. Versus what we've been having is a lot of people come from Jersey, and you hear a lot of these bills, and they're, everything from wages and all that, and come to find out there's nobody actually from Maryland benefiting from all these wage bills. So I wanted to put this in to try to canter that back a little bit to say, well, at least have an effort, and if you can't hire them, I believe I guess I need to revisit the bill. It doesn't say if you can't hire them, it allows you to still hire whoever you need to. I think you should have had to pay something into an apprenticeship fund. Yes. Yeah, so it just basically, so the theory is this. So let's say for this project, we don't have enough people. Well, you're gonna hire out of state, fine. You're gonna pay into the apprenticeship fund. So the next project, we will have Marylanders, and you can hire Marylanders. Because my overall goal is if we're gonna have all these pay requirements, that it not be people from Delaware and Jersey who are down here testifying in front of my committee all the time, but taking Maryland money out of state.
I get that, but I live next to Delaware. I mean, we live next to
Sure.
Delaware. My Pennsylvania also.
I understand.
So my guys are sitting down saying, I got people working up in Chestertown, or they got to go over there. Those people live over there for whatever reason, and I got to bring them in here. This can limit that.
Much like tariffs, I guess, in a way that if we motivate people to build here, then eventually we'll have enough workers here that we won't need to go to Delaware.
This is a Make Maryland Great Again bill.
Not at all. I was trying, but yeah, that's the goal, really. So I understand. I think we've tried to limit the projects to steer away from some of that. Correct, Tatiana? In certain counties. Have you seen? Is your county in there?
Is my county in where? I'm sorry.
It's been certain counties are being excluded from this project.
I didn't see the exclusions. I just read through.
Is it Bug Tussle? What county is it?
Bug Tussle, Maine. Sportsman Neck, Delaware. I mean, it's Queen Anne, Cecil, and Caroline. I'm right there.
What page is the exemption for the counties on?
Page 6.
I apologize. The bill came out of the HTO different than it went in, so.
Is it page 6?
This county's not included.
You're right.
It's only for counties with a population over 300,000.
What? Oh, yeah, it's for a large, so it's only for counties of the population of over 300,000.
Okay. Yeah, so then you're.
I'm good then.
Yes, sir.
So I'm inclined to vote for the bill. I just want to make sure I understand what the amendments are doing, only because I as well am having a hard time finding the reprint. I don't want to spend a lot of time going through it, but just maybe highlight what the amendments actually do so I can get on board with this bill.
Tatiana?
Okay.
Yes.
So the amendments limit the application of the bill to certain projects, as I said, alters definitions, limit the applicable residency requirements to certain apprenticeship hours, authorizes certain contributions in lieu of fulfilling the apprentice hour requirements, authorizes the application of excess hours to certain future contracts, alters the method of calculating the financial penalty for failing to meet the requirements of the bill, and authorizes debarment if a person is found to have violated the requirements 5 times in a 5-year period rather than twice in a 10-year period.
Right, okay, so when contractors do work, quite often, if a jurisdiction has a residency requirement, they're required to sign a certification. But it's not like they have to report every job every week that they're doing payroll. They just have to, in good faith, but also in practice, do what the bill is requiring. So
Correct.
That's where we're headed with this bill.
I believe that's what the bill, the intent of this bill is as well.
Right. Well, because there would be a reporting requirement problem I would have, but it doesn't feel like that's the case. It feels like when you get the bid, you probably have to sign.
Good faith.
Yes.
Yeah, but if you get caught, that's why we have a penalty.
Well, okay, so you don't want to get caught, but I'm saying you don't want to have to go through burdensome reporting requirements every month or
the goal
every
is,
week.
but when we did have penalties, like, so if you mislead, you're like, yes, I'm doing it, but you're not. I guess was it 5 times in a 5-year period or something? Yes. Which is crazy. You're supposed, that's a lot of latitude.
I mean, I might speak on the bill, but I think,
You gonna vote against it?
I think I'm happy with the amendments.
Okay. All right. You said you're going to speak on the bill?
I may.
One second. Oh,
How about this? I like the bill with the amendments.
okay. Delegate Rose.
Answered my questions.
Okay. Delegate Harrison.
Yes, Chair, with all due respect. First, we said that there were no amendments, and they're saying there are amendments, and I don't see anything, and maybe I'm missing it. I can't find a reprint. I don't see anything. What am I missing?
HCO's amendments.
So they're
We can't
not
see 'em.
even in the
They're
system?
not in our committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the record, I support it 100%, but I just really would have.
Delegate Rose.
How did HGO vote on it?
All
Yeah, it was unanimous.
Okay.
It was unanimous, Wyvil. Please.
Okay, as a contractor in the trade, I support the bill and understand the intention, and look forward to voting for the bill.
Thank you. Good boy. Delegate Wyvil.
So I appreciate the Trump-like approach, but when I was a county commissioner, we considered something similar to this when it came to awarding contracts. And all the contractors came in and said, please don't do this because there will be retaliation. So we have Pennsylvania, we have Virginia, we have West Virginia within 6 miles of us. So I know now it's only 300,000 population or more, but I think next year it's everybody. So that's why I can't.
Well, no, I mean, I put the bill in. I have no intention. I don't really, and I'm not trying to castigate you or anything, but I'm not really trying to put bad faith bills in. I don't like doing that. I'd rather, you know where I'm coming from and you can work it down. So there will be, I have no intent on making it that way. So I don't need you to support the bill. I'm just letting you know. And to your point, I don't want to make it to where it's so difficult that people start, not hiring Marylanders out of state as well. I just thought, as I've said before, that, with all the bills we have coming down there, so many times I find it so awkward to hear all these people from New Jersey telling Maryland how much we should pay our people. And it's only apprentices as well. Yes.
These are state contracts, correct? So it's state taxpayer dollars, and we're just saying that you want those state taxpayer dollars to go to Marylanders.
Yeah, it sounds crazy.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, guess we'll have to do a roll call. All in favor was amended. Mr. Vice, are good?
Aye.
Delegate Harrison. Aye. Delegate Boafo. Aye. Delegate Howard. Yes. Delegate Charkoudian. Yes. Delegate Rose. Yes. Delegate Pruski. Aye. Delegate Fennell. Aye. Delegate Turner. Aye. Delegate Valderrama. Yes. Delegate Chi. Aye. Delegate Frazier-Dago. Aye. Delegate Adams. Yes. Delegate Arentz. Okay. Delegate Pippi. Yes. Delegate Johnson. Aye. Delegate Rogers. Yes. Delegate Ampry. Aye. Delegate Weibel. No. Delegate Fisher. No. My man. And Delegate Queen. There you go. Bill moves in spite of those two. Next bill, please. Wait. Wait. No? Do we want to do, before we go into our 3 big ones, do we want to do the other ones first and come back?
Sure.
All right, so, I know, but 1035, 1036, and 1037.
116.
We're gonna move on to House Bill 116. Senate Bill, thank you, 116.
Senate Bill 116, as amended, requires the Department of the Environment, the Maryland Energy Administration, and the University of Maryland School of Business, in coordination with the Department of Legislative Services, to conduct an analysis of the likely environmental, energy, and economic impacts of data center development in the state. This amendment just conforms the Senate bill to the House bill that was passed.
Move the amendment.
On the amendment, any discussion? Hearing none on the bill. Mark, apologize, go ahead, sir. Okay, on the bill, any discussion? Second, thank you. Mark?
Thank you. So this is the bill that basically outsources the study to people that don't have any regulatory authority, right? I mean, obviously the PSC is the one that's going to be looking at this, but they're just studying this because they being the University of Maryland.
The Department of Environment will be studying the environmental impacts. The Maryland Energy Administration will be studying the energy impacts, and the Maryland School of Business will be studying the economic impacts.
Okay. And there are no current prohibitions to moving forward with one now?
Correct.
No.
In the bill? Okay, thanks.
Any opposition to the bill?
I believe when we passed the House bill, there were some labor groups that were opposed, but that was it.
It was yeah, steam fitters. I think this was House Bill 270. Any other questions? Seeing none, I guess I'll do a roll call. Mr. Vice Chair?
Aye.
Delegate Harrison? Yes. Delegate Boafo? Delegate Howard? Yes. Delegate Charkoudian? Yes. Delegate Rose? Delegate Pruski? Delegate Fennell? Delegate Turner? Delegate Valderrama? Delegate Chi? Delegate Frazier-Dago? Delegate Adams? Yes. Delegate Arentz is excused. Delegate Pippy? Yes. Delegate Johnson? Delegate Rogers? Yes. Delegate Ampry? Yes. Delegate Weibel? Yes. Delegate Fisher? No. There we go. And Delegate Queen? Thank you. Bill moves forward. Next bill, please.
The next bill is Senate Bill 144. This is the cross-file to House Bill 15 that we've already voted out. It establishes the Maryland Limited Worker Cooperative Association Act. The amendment in your packet conforms the Senate bill to the House bill.
Move the amendment.
On the amendment, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
On the bill is, on the
bill's amended.
On the bill is amended. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, it was broken.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go through to a roll call. Mr. Vice Chair.
Aye.
Delegate Harrison. Aye. Delegate Boafo. Delegate Howard. Delegate Charkoudian. Yes. Delegate Rose. Yes. Delegate Pruski. Aye. Delegate Fennell. Aye. Delegate Turner. Aye. Delegate Valderrama. Delegate Chi.
It's a business-friendly bill, yes.
There you go. Wonder who the cross file is. Delegate Frazier-Dago.
Aye.
Delegate Adams. No. Delegate Arentz is excused. Delegate Pippy. Wow. Delegate Johnson. Aye. Delegate Rogers. Yes. Delegate Ampry. Aye. Delegate Weibel. No. Delegate Fisher. Delegate Queen. Bill moves. Next bill, please.
Senate Bill 148 is the Senate cross-file to House Bill 427. There's an amendment that makes technical changes and conforms the Senate bill to the House bill as passed by this committee.
Move the amendment. Second.
On the amendment, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none on the bill is amended.
Move the bill is amended.
Any discussion? Brief. What'd you say, sir?
This is Queens, I thought. Delegate Queens, if I'm not mistaken, right?
It was unanimous.
Yeah.
It was unanimous.
But you can change that, right?
Go ahead, Fisher.
Yes. Would you like?
Esteemed?
Would you like me? Do we need a roll call on this bill, guys? Okay. All in favor of the bill moving as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, all present and voted favorable. Delegate Arentz is excused. Next bill, please.
Bill 227 modifies the process by which an employee or dependents of an employee may apply to and receive payment from the Uninsured Employers Fund in a workers' compensation claim action and authorizes the commission to order a certain offset or credit against an award.
Move favorable. Second.
The motion is favorable. There was no crossfall on this bill. Is there any discussion?
Can we? It was unanimous, but that's not a good indicator for me. Can I just get an explanation of the bill and what it does?
The bill modifies the process by which an employee or dependents may apply or receive payment from the uninsured employers fund. It also would have required an employee or dependent to return a certain overpayment to the UEF as drafted, but now it authorizes the Workers' Compensation Commission to order an offset against an award to get the overpayment amount back.
I couldn't hear one word you said.
You got to move that mic closer, lean up, yeah. You should probably say that halfway through the speech.
Sorry. I couldn't hear when you stopped. Yeah.
So it modifies the process by which an employee or dependents of an employee, if the employee may apply to or receive payment from the uninsured employers fund for a claim. It also, as drafted, would have required an employee or dependent to return a certain overpayment, so they would have to have written a check to the uninsured employers fund. But now it authorizes the Workers' Compensation Commission to order an offset or credit against their UEF benefit payment award to recuperate the money that was overpaid.
Okay. Does that help you? So the offset, can you kind of just walk us through that portion?
As far as the way any overpayments are recovered?
Yeah.
Are you asking, like, is there a percentage taken out of the future payments?
I'm just trying to make sure there's nothing substantive in here that I'm missing. I could be, I don't know. Just, it's a very technical bill.
On page 2, and it says the Workers' Compensation Commission may order an offset or credit against an award for permanent partial disability benefits for any benefits paid by the uninsured employers fund that were also paid by the employer.
Okay, thank you.
Instead of them having to write a check. Because I think before you had to just write a check out of your pocket, this one at least comes out of any future payments you're going to get. So. Okay.
And there's an injury. Yeah. So when you have a worker who's under when you have a worker who's injured and the employer doesn't have workers' comp insurance, that's what this fund is for.
Right.
And so if I'm hearing your explanation correctly, it amends what that looks like as, are we trying to get money back from the employer? I mean, that's what I'm reading here.
So it's not necessarily from the employer, it's just getting, so if they paid twice, so if they paid the employer and the employee, or the employer paid the employee and the UEF also paid the employee benefits. So they're trying to get the extra money that they paid because they,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's a technical bill. I mean, okay, so there's no fiscal note, there's no.
No.
It's okay.
Purely technical cleanup, though.
Yeah.
Seth?
Thank you. So is there any interest or anything like if they're in the rearages or if there's a overpayment of a couple $1,000s, are they being charged any interest or anything like that? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. The motion was favorable. Do I need a roll call? On motion favorable, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any?
Move the bill's amended.
There's no amendments.
Move the bill.
All right. The motion is favorable. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposed? Hearing none, all present voted favorable. Delegate Aaron's is excused. Next bill, please.
Senate Bill 306 requires the Workers' Compensation Commission to regulate fees and other charges, including reasonable dispensing fees for
We're
the
going to hold this bill for a day, but it will be on the voting list tomorrow unless something changes. Next bill, please.
As amended, Senate Bill 399 would exempt subject to specified conditions certain lands from continuing to be designated as part of the Big Savage Mountain Wildland, Bearpen Wildland, or Dan Mountain Wildland. There's an amendment submitted by Delegate Charkoudian that limits the distance from the Potomac-Edison transmission line that the next era energy transmission line may be, specifies that for any wildland acreage loss, Next Era Energy must replace it with twice that amount and must enter into a land conservation management plan for the new acres and set certain public participation requirements related to the transmission line project.
Move the amendment.
Second.
On the amendment, before I get into the amendment, what is Next Air's stance on this amendment?
Everybody's good with it.
I just want publicly.
Everyone is good.
Thank you. All right, on the amendment, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. On the bill as amended?
Move the bill as amended.
On the bill as amended, is there any discussion? Delegate Fisher.
Yes, thank you. So obviously, I understand what the bill does, but we have some other bills dealing with in-state generation. I mean, it seems like we should do everything we can to encourage that before building extension cords.
That's one way of looking at it. However, there's the now and the then.
Right.
So the now is what we're doing with these transmission lines, and the then is what we're trying to get to, assuming the bills pass, assuming we get the financing is there. So we kind of don't have an option to build these extension cords right now.
So to what extent does the PSC have the authority to require the additional lines to be put on someone else's poles that are currently there, rather than knocking down more trees and calling it environmentally correct?
The lines wouldn't be on their poles, it would be parallel to them. So
he's asking me, why can't they put them on the old poles?
I mean, obviously, it's another company, I'm sure, that owns
There's
them.
also a distance requirement between, I'm sure you know this, as far as the power lines, you got to have them so far apart, and you stack them that way.
Well, they're all electricity lines, so.
And we also have someone from the PSC
That's
here.
why I was wondering to what extent. Someone from the PSC?
That'd be great.
All right, Ben Baker with the Maryland Public Service Commission. So make sure I get this right. You're asking, can we require somebody to run lines on existing poles, right?
Yeah.
So when somebody comes in for a CPCN, they basically have to show that they've considered alternative routing through existing right-of-ways, and I would need to, so basically that has to be a consideration. What I don't know in this instance is on this bill in terms of if this is for a new CPCN or if there's something else going on here. But typically when somebody comes in for a CPCN, they have to show that they've considered alternative right-of-ways, which would basically looking at existing rights-of-ways.
But my understanding is this is already an existing right-of-way.
Okay, well then I think that would impact this situation. So I guess I would need to check with our council then to get you.
Okay, that's kind of important.
Okay.
Yeah, by your testimony, well, Delegate Charkoudian, go ahead.
What this actually does with the amendment is, it's not an existing right-of-way, so there's a First Energy, I think, has a transmission line that goes through the same wildlands. It goes for 2 miles in the wildlands, it's 200 feet wide. This says you would give, potentially, if it goes through the process with DNR and all the public participation and everything else, that they could take another 200 feet parallel to it, so you're not sort of going through all new wildlands, but you're still taking down 200 feet of new wildlands. It's not the existing right-of-way that First Energy is using parallel to it. So basically widens from 200 to 400. That's what it allows for.
So I think that you made my point, which is
Yeah.
you're running 2 parallel transmission lines, 2 extension cords, as I like to call them, and you're mowing down a bunch of trees in one, calling it environmental. And my question is that why can't, if there's already one there that's parallel, to what extent can the PSC require them to use those lines as opposed to cutting down a bunch of trees?
Right, and that's where I think what I do know is when they come in for a CPCN, we have to look at the alternative routing through existing rights of ways. What I can't answer you is about this specific situation, so.
Can I
Right.
And also, when we talk about environmental, they're requiring them to replace it twice the number of trees. So I think on the environmental side, we're trying to live in the tension between, the environment and the power down to.
Where are they putting the trees?
I just wanted to clarify that I worked on this bill not because I like the bill and think it's environmental, but because I wanted to improve it. So I'm not advocating for cutting down trees, but I do think there is this balancing act of transmission has to get built, and if we're going to do it, what are the ways we can mitigate the impact on the environment? But I'm not advocating for this particular path necessarily. I'm saying if we're going to do this path, let's mitigate the impact as much as possible.
Seeing no further discussion. Bill, do we already move the amendments?
Move the amendments.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none on the bills amended?
Move the bills amended.
On the bills amended, Mr. Vice Chair. Delegate Harrison. Yes. Delegate Boafo. Aye. Delegate Howard.
Yes.
Delegate Charkoudian. Yes. Delegate Rose. Yes. Delegate Pruski. Yes. Delegate Fennell. Yes. Delegate Turner. Yes. Delegate Valderrama. Aye. Delegate Chi. Aye. Delegate Frazier Hidalgo. Aye. Delegate Adams. No. Delegate Arentz. Is excused. Thank you. Delegate Pippy. Delegate Johnson. Aye. Delegate Rogers. Yes. Delegate Ampry. Yes. Delegate Weibel. No. Delegate Fisher. No. Delegate Queen. Yes. Well, looks like the Democrats pulled a Republican bill out. Good job, guys. It's crazy, literally. All right, next bill is House Bill 586. We're going to hold this for one more day, but again, everybody listening, I do think this will be on the voting list tomorrow. Next bill, please.
Senate Bill 785 alters the definition of employer under the Maryland Parental Leave Act to exclude employers who are covered by the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act for the current calendar year.
Move favorable. Second.
Motion is favorable. Is there any discussion? Do I need to do a roll call? All in favor of the bill moving forward, or favorable, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. All present voted aye, except for Arentz is excused. Next bill, please.
Yeah, next bill is Senate Bill 901. We are secondary on this bill. ENT is primary. You should have seen the reprint and the amendments, I believe, were in the packet that were sent to you. Based upon the ENT vote, as amended, the bill establishes an extended producer responsibility program for packaging and paper products. The bill requires producers of covered materials to individually or through the producer responsibility organization to submit a producer responsibility plan to the Department of Environment and take certain actions in accordance with that plan. It allows the producer responsibility organization to collect fees for member producers. It allows service providers to seek reimbursement from the producer responsibility organization for certain costs and provides for oversight and enforcement of the program by the Maryland Department of Environment. There are amendments, like I said, that alter and clarify definitions, add language to ensure that the bill would not preclude a bottle deposit program in the state, require the annual registration fee to cover as necessary the cost of developing and implementing program regulations, and clarifies that a plan's methodology for reimbursement rates for covered services for covered materials is exclusive of exempt producers. There were also some additional amendments in your packet from Delegate Adams that we received last night.
Okay. Delegate Adams, did you ask to hold this bill?
Can I hold it because there's two amendments and I can't adequately explain
And
it.
I would ask you to talk also to their people from the product, I don't know, the producer response, the producers are out there, so I'd ask you to also talk with them. We'll hold it for one more day.
Thank you.
Next bill, please. All right, we're gonna brief indulgence. We're going to move back to House Bill 505.
So again, as amended, House Bill 505 renames the Renewable Portfolio Standard to be the Clean Energy Portfolio Standard and incorporates nuclear energy into the renamed Clean Energy Portfolio Standard.
Was there any amendments? Yeah, we already moved the amendments, that's right. All right, is there any more discussion on this bill?
Move the bill. Move favorable.
On bill moving favorable. Mr. Vice Chair.
Aye.
Delegate Harrison. Aye. Delegate Boafo. Aye. Delegate Howard. Yes. Delegate Charkoudian. Yes. Delegate Rose. Delegate Pruski. Aye. Delegate Fennell. Aye. Delegate Turner. Aye. Delegate Valderrama. Yes. Delegate Chi. Aye. Delegate Frazier-Dago. Aye. Delegate Adams.
Yes.
Delegate Arentz. Excused. Sorry, is excused. Delegate Pippy.
Yes.
Delegate Johnson. Aye. Delegate Rogers. Yes. Delegate Ampry. Yes. Delegate Weigel.
A clean yes.
Delegate Fisher. Yes. Oh. Delegate Queen. All right. Bill moves. What? And then we'll run right after that Senate Bill 937, which is its corollary. Again, start with House Bill 1035.
As amended, House Bill 1035 will establish ratepayer protections related to gas infrastructure investment, trade association fees, and multi-year rate plans, establishes a solicitation process for expedited certificate of public convenience and necessity, establishes procurements for transmission level energy storage and nuclear generation, alters certain energy assistance programs, and requires electric companies to develop rate schedules for large load customers. On your reprint, there are 5 amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 gives the Public Service Commission authority to charge certain electricity suppliers and customers in co-located arrangements certain fees, establishes a distribution level energy storage goal and requirement for 150 megawatts of capacity, establishes a solicitation process for an expedited CPCN, establishes a nuclear procurement process, establishes a transmission level energy storage procurement for 1.6 gigawatts of capacity, and makes the distribution of funds to residential ratepayers an allowable use under the Strategic Energy Investment Fund and exempts those funds from being taxable. Amendment number 3 requires certain investor-owned public service companies to justify the use of contract labor versus in-house labor, adds cost containment language to the STRIDE program, mandates utilities create a tariff schedule for large load customers who operate nearly 24/7, requires utilities to justify their non-STRIDE gas infrastructure projects, prohibits utilities from filing for reconciliation in multi-year rate plans, and requires the plans to have consumer benefits, and prohibits utilities from covering through rates membership dues and fees related to trade associations and costs associated with the use of private planes. Amendment number 4 removes wasted energy and refuse-derived fuel from Tier 1 of the Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard. Amendment number 5 allows the Department of Housing and Community Development to provide loans in addition to grants for certain energy conservation projects and expands the eligible funding sources that may be used to meet the greenhouse gas reduction requirements under the Empower program.
Move the amendments.
On the amendments, is there any discussion?
They do many good things.
Delegate Ampry.
I know we briefly discussed yesterday. I just want to make sure we have it on the record for clarification purposes. On page 14, the amendment in regards to what type of contracts would be, the contracts to be applicable under this law. Just want to verify, if you have a contract already in place, this wouldn't touch that contract.
It's in the way the goal of this body is to not affect work that's already been done. So if you have a contract that's in place, well, the utilities are now required, if you're on year 3 of the contract, well, this year they're required to pay prevailing wage. So we wanted to clarify, because I think we passed this bill a few years ago and we didn't clarify that they're required to pay prevailing wage for work that's going to be for this next year, but not for last year.
Right. So
therefore, the subs and the generals are not required to pay people that have already been paid and already done the work, prevailing wage if they themselves were not getting prevailing wage, even if it's a 5-year contract, because there's extensions, things of that nature, and you can't kick it out to 2035. Brian?
Agree.
Okay. So
there's
it is the intent of this body to make
Right.
sure that it's very clear that we're not to require contractors to pay for work that been previously done, and it was not, if they weren't paid prevailing wage.
Right, so no one can come back and ask for back
That's
pay
correct.
for a
There's
prevailing
no
wage.
back pay, there's no back pay allowed because there was no back pay, there was no prevailing wage paid to that contractor.
Okay.
Yes, should be no lawsuits.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
Delegate Fisher?
Oh. Yes, so in this omnibus bill, what in this bill reduces rates today?
So the primary driver of reducing rates will be the credit, the bill credit that all residential ratepayers in the state will receive. I believe it's going to be $200 million to all residential ratepayers. Split up, that will be about $80 per residential ratepayer. Outside of that, the prohibition on reconciliation, there's expectation that that will save about $40 million immediately for ratepayers. Allowing DHCD to expand their funding sources for Empower will allow them to use more funds to meet the reduction goals, which means how DHCD is structured, any funds that they don't have to meet those goals, they have to get from ratepayers. So any new funds that they can bring in will reduce the ratepayer costs that they have to tack on. That's short term. Justifications, new justifications for investments, in-house labor justifications, all that should reduce rates in the short term.
Okay, so you're basically the money that's being given back to people for 2 months for their highest electricity bills is their money, but it's a couple of months of their money that they're getting back, but Empower is still in place? That's not being suspended?
Empower is not being suspended, no.
Okay, so it's just a piecemeal 2-month
So
thing?
it's being created an allowable use under the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. So at any point, more money can be given out. It's not a one-time thing. That's just the money that is currently being allocated to give back to residential ratepayers.
How about data centers? Is it silent on data centers, front of meter, back of meter?
So if data centers or any large load customers or anyone enters into a behind the meter arrangement, they'll still be required to pay the same fees or costs that customers in front of the meters arrangements are in. But that's it. Outside of that, there is a tariff schedule that each electric company in the state will have to adopt to create built-in protections so that residential ratepayers aren't on the hook for these interconnections of these large load customers.
No, that's helpful. And Washington Gas had some concerns and some amendments. Have they been adopted into this particular?
I'm sure they've been addressed. I don't know if they've been adopted.
Not all part. You know, there were many rounds of negotiations between us and the Senate. We took some of the language, but no, I would not classify their situation or their position is now favorable, nor do I think that we adopted everything proposed. And I've seen multiple rounds of amendments from all of the utilities, including them. So I'm not exactly sure what the last round of amendments was from them, but I know that there are still outstanding issues that they have. I would also, in addition to what Dwayne had mentioned, you know, I think that there are, what's that?
Go ahead.
No, I think that there are additional reforms that are going to drastically reduce rates. The first is multi-year plans, as we've seen with BGE, and I'll just use rounding here, but they essentially proposed a $300 million rate case. It was knocked down by the PSC to $200 million, and then through reconciliations, they ended up at $400 million. Again, I'm rounding. The bill does address reconciliations addresses both using multi-year rate plans to demonstrate that they have to show a consumer benefit now. Additionally, there's no more reconciliations just in favor of the utility. You can only reconcile down to benefit the ratepayer. We have significant reforms around STRIDE, so it's very similar, not exactly the same, to what Delegate Embry brought in. We took most, if not all, no, I think we took all of the language that we worked with Delegate Pippi on, which we are appreciative of. Since then, I think we've kind of even curtailed that a little bit back. So it is a little bit more favorable to the utilities in the sense that they could use it. I would still not, again, classify their position as being favorable, but it does add guardrails in and around that provision. And then the last thing I would say is there is language similar to the bill we discussed earlier regarding in-house labor versus contractor labor. And I know that Delegate Ampry had some questions regarding that. We obviously addressed the prevailing wage, but in this instance, the utilities need to consider their in-house labor versus contractor labor. And I think that the example that is floating around is just a replacement of a pole. If it's in-house labor, it's roughly $8,000. And if you use contractor labor, it's $14,000. And what we see with, I believe it's the Piedmont project, you see almost that entire I guess, I don't want to call it a reconciliation, but when they BG asked to revisit it and the price almost doubled, a lot of that surrounded contract labor being used, and then you end up paying, or the ratepayer ends up paying significantly more on the rate of return in addition. Ben, anything else I'm missing there, buddy? Close enough.
So I guess I thought the Office of People's Counsel just prevailed against BG&E to require electrification, which I would presume is going to mean a lot more appliances bought through Empower. And so isn't that going to impact the Empower fees probably within a year? And aren't they going to soar again because BG&E is being forced to do that versus other things?
No, I don't believe that is necessarily the case. I think, again, to reiterate, and I guess we'll do it over on the floor, we already did it once this year, but for every dollar in, there's about $2.12 of savings for the ratepayer. It has been demonstrated. I think the last report was total ratepayers paid into the system was $4 billion. The rate that they saw a benefit was $14 billion of direct benefit to the consumer, to the ratepayer. And what essentially that is saying is that that's $10 billion less of capital expenditures, which again, there is a rate of return in addition to just that additional expenditure that we mentioned that benefits all of us. And so, no, this bill doesn't necessarily directly impact Empower in any way, shape, or form. But again, I think that overall, and we heard this from BGE when they testified in whatever that was in DLS's building, the joint hearing room, that they are in favor of the program.
So, okay, so it doesn't impact Empower. So Empower is in place, and I think it's pretty clear that if BG&E is being required to buy everybody more appliances and to electrify everything, that is not going to cost less money for Empower levies on people's utilities bills. That's going to cost more. But notwithstanding that, I'm asking because I wanted to know what's in the bill, because I've read it and I know it's just to make sure that we have the right document. How about the nuclear RFP? I'm trying to figure that out. There's like an RFP you mentioned for, can you explain that? What the purpose of the RFP is, because there is a nuclear power plant in the state, and I guess the presumption is you want other locations.
So the RFP, the Public Service Commission will be given 2 years to adopt regulations to implement this program. And so they will be creating a zero emission credit. And so anyone can apply as long as it's new generation. So if an existing nuclear generator wanted to take advantage of this program, they would have to upgrade, but they would only get this zero emission credit for the new generation that they produce in this upgraded facility, not existing generation. Okay. Outside of that, any new generation would be able to take advantage of this program.
How about as it relates to a natural gas pipeline that's through a county where there's a data center and they need to build their own natural gas generation on site at the data center, and they're choosing a physical location for that reason? How does this bill help that?
There are no subsidies in this bill for natural gas.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Weibel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start with the easy one first. So the membership dues, I don't follow totally the logic with just carte blanche eliminating membership dues, as there is a benefit to the utilities, especially the smaller ones, where they get research benefits, they get emergency dispatch benefits, and certain benefits from pooling their resources. So I think currently the PSC, you look at membership dues, right? And if it deals with lobbying or anything else, you throw it out. So I did have an amendment. I understand we're not accepting amendments, but my amendment would have stated that the membership dues had to have a direct impact on the customer and would be approved by the PSC, rather than just throw them out in their entirety.
Correct. So just to clarify, Dwayne, we took, and forgive me if I missed that one, but we did take for research purposes. I think that we put that in. Additionally, we exempted co-ops and munis because they have a federal trade association that lobbies in DC. So Chop Tank and Smecco.
But you do have IOUs that do have a customer benefit from them belonging to those members.
So to clarify, yes, it was narrowed to only apply to investor-owned utilities, and the language was changed so that originally it said 501c organizations, any 501c, and it was narrowed to 501c6. So an organization like EPRI, which is a 501c3, this would not apply to.
But everybody else is still out?
Yeah. They can still do it, they just can't make the ratepayer pay. You know, they do make a profit.
Yeah, I get that. But there is a direct benefit to the customer from belonging to those.
Again, hopefully they'll still do it.
All right, the other question on the other amendment, I'm not understanding the logic behind the waste energy and removing that from Tier 1. We did hear testimony when Delegate Stewart presented that there was a net reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from incineration versus landfilling. So we generate 15 million tons of waste in the state on an annual basis. So, and then if you take them out of Tier 1, I'm assuming the way the market works, there's less RECs available, so the price of the remaining RECs is going to go up because there is less of a supply and the demand is equal. Right. So what do we really gain by taking the waste energy plants out of Tier 1? And long-term, what's our solution for alternatives to landfilling? Is it just trucking the waste, exporting it to other states? And what happens when the other states start?
Well, to be clear, there will still be incineration in Maryland. They're not shutting anything down. They just won't be in Tier 1 anymore. And obviously, if you look there, still make money. And most likely, they will pass that on to the individuals whose trash they're burning, any money they might have lost. Secondly, by the RECs going down or going up, because you're not incorrect, that the price of a REC would go up, that incentivizes new generation for the state. So again, that's our benefit.
But rather than throwing them out in their entirety, wouldn't it have been better to say?
We're not throwing them out. They just can't be.
Well, they're thrown out at Tier 1.
Sure.
So wouldn't it have been better for those that have certain emissions standards in place to allow them to remain in versus just throwing them all out in totality?
I think that, so it won't impact, if I remember correctly, it won't impact any of the current contracts. What we are doing is removing the subsidy for those facilities. And obviously, you can see in the bill, it's a little bit awkward on how that is done, but nonetheless, I would think that if I were going to make a St. Mary's County argument is, why should St. Mary's County ratepayers subsidize a facility in Baltimore City or Montgomery County? That's the first part of it. Second, DNR did a study on this, kind of to your second point regarding the REC, and there may be a marginal uptick in the price of the REC, but it's very short-lived because the rest of the market comes in and backfills it and it stabilizes and goes back because it's not that much. And DNR, I can send you this study, Delegate.
Okay. And my third amendment was the easy one. And when you look at the RGGI program and the payments, there's only 3 states in RGGI in PJM region that participate in RGGI. That's Delaware, Maryland, and Jersey. So there is a study done by, I'm sure you all have seen it. It's done by TCR. And basically they're saying because RGGI is not in all the states in the PJM region, it actually is causing more greenhouse gas emissions than less, to the tune of almost 3 million tons a year, because PJM is dispatching the dirtier generation from other states because it's more cost effective to do that, and then ignoring the states where the RGGI surcharge is in place.
I'm going to go, I'm going to punt. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not sure so I'm looking at several studies about RGGI, none of which are consistent with that. So I'm not sure where that study comes from, but what the studies that I'm looking.
It's Tabors, Karamanis, and Rudkevich.
You could send that to me. I can send you these. The ones that I'm looking at show that the 9 states that have RGGI actually show lower electricity prices. They show the implementation.
Are you in the PJM region, or where are you quoting from?
All 9, 3 of them are in PJM, and then others are in other parts of New England. So the 9 RGGI states experience a decline in retail electricity prices by 3.2%. Sorry, yeah, compared to a 7.7% increase in prices for the rest of the country. So that's one. Another talks about the decrease in emissions tied then also to reductions in childhood asthma, preterm births, autism spectrum disorder. Since 2008, the 9 consistent RGGI states, CO2 emissions declined 50%. So I have like 6 or 7 studies here. I'm happy to look at that one. It's clear to me that from a benefit to state ratepayers in particular, as well as our health costs, both of which we're paying attention to right now in the state, as well as emissions, that it's clearly beneficial to stay in RGGI.
So my point with bringing it up is if we truly are going to put out an RFP for a gas generating station to be built in the state, is anyone really going to build a gas generator because the RGGI surcharge puts them out of price competitiveness?
Yeah, let me actually speak to that as well, because, so just if we look at the last couple years, since we've been in RGGI, there haven't been a lot of gas plants built just because there haven't been a lot of plants built across the region because we haven't seen increases in demand. But the Keys Energy Center, which was built in 2018 in Maryland, St. Charles Energy Center, all natural gas, 2017 in Maryland. Those are both gas-fired power plants that were built in the state after we joined RGGI, well after we joined RGGI. I think we joined RGGI in 2009.
And how many states in the PJM region participated when they were built?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said how many states in the PJM territory participated in RGGI when those gas plants were built?
Virginia, New Jersey. No, New Jersey was not in yet.
So you had more, you initially had more states participating in RGGI, now you only have 3. I don't believe Delaware has any generation.
But you have like most of New England is participating in RGGI, and still in 2018, the Tewantic Energy Center, natural gas gets built.
And New England's rates are about double ours.
I'm sorry?
New England's rates are what, double ours, about 30 cents a kilowatt hour?
I think the point that you're trying to make is that if we join RGGI, I think the point you're making is if we join RGGI, we have a competitive disadvantage. We're not likely to build gas in the state. I'm saying, I think
we're
there's
already in RGGI.
Yeah, I think there's reasons that we shouldn't shouldn't build gas in the state. But putting that aside, whether you look at Maryland with 2 other states in RGGI, we have built gas plants in the state after joining RGGI, even though 2 other PJM plants, 2 other PJM states were in RGGI. Or you look at New England, where most of them are in RGGI, and you also see gas plants being built. So either way, whether you're in an area that has ISO New England, where most people are in RGGI, gas plants are getting built after RGGI, or in Maryland, PJM, you have 2, 3, 4 states that are in RGGI, and still we're building gas plants post-RGGI. So like, it just doesn't hold up.
So my point was to level the playing field. Are you going to build a plant in a state that does have the surcharge or a state that doesn't have the surcharge?
I think there's
So
an-
1035 clearly says, we're going to put out RFPs to build gas plants. My question is, doesn't RGGI being in place with only 3 states participating contradict that goal or that RFP to build gas plants in Maryland?
On, like, does the market support the number within, whatever the ELCC rating is, I think would drive, whether the maths, and you could, I guess, make a business investment to do so. I would think that is, regardless of RGGI, sure, it plays a factor in terms of making a decision, but I would think if the numbers in the market work, you would build it.
I think the capacity auction prices are more likely to drive new gas plants than a RGGI surcharge.
So I guess my point of the amendment was we can either be serious about building gas plants in Maryland or we can continue to build the transmission lines to Pennsylvania and West Virginia. That's,
I think we were, and to be very clear, we're creating an opportunity for all kinds of generation. We're not focused on gas plants. We're focused on broadening our portfolio. Like you said, and if it pencils, they'll come. So again, we still have, I'm sure, as you've seen in these bills, other forms of generation. That's just one of the things we're doing. It's not the silver bullet.
The expedited CPCN, there would be cost saving. I don't care where you could take it from the back row, but the expedited CPCN would result, or in theory, be more savings and less costly to go through that process, which is in the bill.
Right, so it doesn't have any financial commitment. So I think the expedited CPCN is saying we're going to basically say we're going to deliver you more regulatory certainty on a faster timeline than would be traditional, but we're not going to actually pay you any money. So I guess that's the trick here, I guess, and how you're trying to save ratepayers through this this accelerated process that we're going to be testing out.
so with that process, do you anticipate anyone applying to Maryland to build a gas plant?
Well, I think that's what we're going to test here, because there's also the hydrogen conversion requirement, or the RNG requirement. So I think we're going to see, like, basically we're going to put out the offer. We're going to see if people choose to come or not, and then we'll reevaluate from there.
So if no one chooses to come, what do we do? Do we come back next year? And
I think we come back next year and have a discussion, and that's part of, I think, the beauty of how it was set up is that we're going to know basically before you start the next session who chose to try to participate in this process.
So that process will be instituted when?
We're supposed to issue the request for, I don't want to say bids because it's not truly an RFP, but the request to participate in October. And then people have 30 days to respond and say we want in or not.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really enjoy the back and forth over here with the, it's almost like peacocking almost, on the stuff. But so I did have a discussion, or I reached out, because one of the concerns, and I think just to summarize, and I don't want to speak for Delegate Weibel, but he's bringing up a valid point, that it was put out that we want to attract folks to develop natural gas generation in our state. And so then when we look at that, and it's one thing to say it, right? But then it's another thing to actually put things in place to make it happen. And Ben popped up here a minute ago, and he mentioned the biofuel hydrogen component. And so my question is that a deterrent from folks wanting to generate natural gas? I mean, because we talked about factors, we talked about penciling, putting things to paper. If we're really trying to attract folks to develop natural gas in our state so that we're not having to build extension cords all over the place and rely on dirty Pennsylvania, West Virginia power, then I feel like that's a major, major obstacle for anyone, literally looking at whether they want to come to Maryland to do that. And so maybe Dwayne or somebody can chime in on that component.
So, I mean, I was just going to say on that front, I mean, it's only when that technology becomes available, readily available, that you would have to convert. I don't think that is a concern for anybody, that we're is going to build a gas plant in the next, I don't know, while.
Well, what's the timeline for somebody who's looking to build a gas plant? What's their timeline? It's more than 6 months.
So as amended, the bill requires just a simple report every 5 years from the plant on whether it's feasible to do it or not. And if the plant says no, then nothing happens.
Feasibility, is it feasible? How they build it, is it feasible? And the option is, I guess, if you want to argue the technological option of future-proofing your generator, that's fine. But if it's not feasible, then it's just not feasible. It's creating that option, it's leaving it out there. And to be clear for everybody listening, the goal isn't obviously to build a multitude of natural gas plants. It was to give an option to basically replace some of the RMR facilities they have that are using coal and oil. There is a megawatt limit, I think, of what, 3 megawatts? 3 gigawatts, excuse me. That's it. So.
But what is, I mean, look, I don't want to get into it because I know where this is going to go, but feasible is like, so you're saying there's a chance, it's possible. What we're saying is like, whether it's economically practicable, because just because, you put a gun to someone's head and you're like, look, I can make you do this, that doesn't mean that it's a good idea to do it.
That's why the word feasible. See, I think we're leaving as broad as we can for the generator to explain why it's not feasible. Economics, physics, technology, instead of just limiting to economically not feasible.
Wow.
The word feasible can be stretched to all of that.
Can we add the word economical in there?
But it's already in there by the word feasible. Like I said, you're narrowing something I'm trying to broaden. You want to put in economically feasible, and I think you had but it could be less technologically not feasible. So to me,
I think feasible means possible.
Right, so economically possible, technologically possible. My point is, I don't want to jump through hoops on something that I think we've already kind of covered. I appreciate it, but by saying feasible, we've left it, I think, broad enough. So they can explain why it is, or in this case, is not going to be working in the near future.
Well, I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Adams.
My turn, Mr. Chairman?
It is your turn, and I know you're going to be brief.
Only if you ask me to be brief.
Please, God, be brief.
So the easiest question is that there was some discussion about collective bargaining and related community benefit agreements. I see that in one section of the bill it was stricken, but I see that in another section that it was not. So on the reprint, page 16, it looks like we strike some of this, but then if I go to page 24, it exists. And my reason for bringing it up is that, well, I have many reasons, primarily as it relates to, well, getting projects done at the right price, but also if you've got prevailing wage legislation, which you do in the bill, I question the wisdom of limiting work like this being done in the state only by unions. So if it was the intent to strike it, which we did in one section of the bill, why does it exist elsewhere?
So originally, when the bills were drafted, the community benefit agreement, so in Delegate Charkoudian's ACE Act, the community benefit agreement applied to transmission level storage. And in the bills as introduced, the nuclear had a community benefit agreement, as well as the governor's bill had a community benefit agreement. When these bills were being combined, the community benefit agreement accidentally applied to the expedited CPCN, which it shouldn't have, so that was drafting error. And so it was fixing that drafting error. So for instance, a natural gas plant wouldn't have to enter into a community benefit agreement. It's only plants that are getting state money that would have to enter into a community benefit agreement.
So prevailing wage is the mechanism to protect the state's tax dollars being invested in projects. What's the rationale behind limiting who can participate on jobs to those that are union?
I would think that the prevailing wage has to do with the worker. The community benefit agreement has to do with the community that surrounds that facility. And so what we're just saying is if you're going to put up a facility in XYZ community, that you should be investing in and around that. And I think that we see that play out with some of these proposed data centers. I think they're just almost naturally doing it coming in and offering counties money, offering infrastructure projects in and around where they plan or intend to invest their dollars and put their
Just want to ask a question.
Let me just, right, because I don't need a lengthy discussion.
You
So-
missed the part of your question was not about community benefit agreements. It was about project labor agreements.
Yeah, I mean, so page 24, 7-1202, talks about these jobs are going to be subject to prevailing wage. So we all know this committee in its posture on prevailing wage, if we're going to use state dollars, you're going to use prevailing wages. The parts of this that I believe are unnecessary, especially if you're looking to improve the in-state performance of the work, is you're going to reject parts of this that talk about projects that have to be subject to an agreement that establishes these guarantees against strikes, lockouts, similar disruptions. A merit shop doesn't have these concerns. And frankly, a union doesn't have these concerns, but I can tell you who really doesn't have them, one that's already part of a collective bargaining agreement. So while a merit shop could come in and say, look, I can do this, the only one that can guarantee it is one that's part of a union. That's bottom line. So if we were interested in, okay.
Seriously asking, and I don't know, are we?
I would strike page 24, 17-202. I don't have the line numbers, but I would strike references to things that relate to strikes and lockouts. And,
But are we, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, so historically, the difference between the community benefit agreement that we've put into a number of our bills and the project labor agreement, which is what was originally in the bill that got removed, is that the project labor agreement actually it requires a signature with a union. So the unions are negotiating before the project even starts. A community benefit agreement has a number of things in place that protect both union and non-union
Delegate,
workers.
I'm sorry, I'm going to stop you. I understand precisely what the.
I wanted to know why we are leaving, basically, his question is why we're forcing it to be union-only work.
It's not.
It is.
And I'm saying,
By using a project labor agreement.
it's not a project labor agreement, is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there was project labor
We took
agreement.
it out.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm saying.
So somebody who, the only one that can follow 17-202, 2, Roman numeral 2, number 2, which is guarantee against strike, lockouts, and similar disruptions, are a union. I'm a merit shop contractor. I can't guarantee against a strike. Okay. I mean, we don't have to take the amendment. I'm saying that if the interest of the committee was to produce the best result with the minimum amount of issues related to getting in-state contractors to do work, do we want to have the best price? Do we want to have a number of different contractors participating on these sort of projects? You do not put this kind of hurdle into a bill like this. If we're interested in helping the ratepayer, okay, you can do that with prevailing wage. At the same time, you're allowing participation in a competitive environment. That language limits participation. That's all, and I don't need to say anything else about it. That's where I'm at. I can move on to the next thing.
Delegate, so there is a built-in requirement that is specifically for the nuclear part. The Public Service Commission will be required to submit a report to us about any technical barriers there are to getting nuclear generation under this program. And so that report is due before next session. And so if there are any issues that the legislature wants to address at that point, it can be addressed.
Including that, if they determine that because of project labor agreements, things like that, we're using our ability to actually meet our goals and do this.
All right, so in order to be brief, my only last question, STRIDE is meant to be safety. I mean, that's what it's all about. On page, 4-210, C, nothing in this section may be construed to alter a gas company's obligation under this division to make improvements to a gas system that are necessary to ensure the safety of the gas system. So this is part of the STRIDE. So why are we putting in Maryland code that nothing in this section alters the company's obligation to perform safety projects? That's the point behind STRIDE, yet we're altering STRIDE. So what happens is after you make that statement, you then go forward with language that limits their ability to do safety-related projects. So my question is, why do we have this part that says nothing in this section should be construed to alter a gas company's obligation under this division to make improvements to a gas system that are necessary to ensure the safety of the gas system, and then turn right around and do the balance of the document that curtails and limits their ability to do that?
I think it's we kind of missed the point. Stride is not the only way that they can improve their systems. So I get thrown off again because we've heard this before, like somehow the way that they can do it is if they get their money in advance through Stride versus no, you can also just improve your system, take care of the system that you have. We did not tighten it to where they can't do anything. We're saying you might not be able to do it through Stride. You still have an expectation to do what you need to do to have a safe and viable system. But you can't use, we've limited this use for Stride. There's a big difference between saying you can't do it and saying, oh, you can't use Stride money to do it.
Well, okay, so what I'm saying is that we've added language that says that the gas companies have to demonstrate a series of things. They have to do an analysis. They have to have a plan that's proposed 6 months in advance of construction.
Yes, sir.
And all these things are not Stride. Those are impediments to what I would call quickly repairing projects. That's the point of Stride. And I'm just asking the question. You're answering it. I'm just making sure that, but if there's an understanding, why would we have language in the bill that says that nothing that follows, which is literally making it difficult to do repair projects, are we saying that the gas companies are still obligated to do safety projects? It's sort of a circular.
If we never Stride, they would still be obligated. I think by just decent business ownership to make it safe for the user. I don't think that the Stride would not negate their requirement.
Okay, all right.
But go ahead, Brian.
I would also just say, when you're using Stride or even multi-year rate plan, there is some similarities there on who the risk lies with. And so if they're, the utility wants to use Stride, essentially what they're saying is on that surcharge, they're using ratepayer money to own the risk up front versus in recovery. And so all we're saying is if you're going to use Stride, there has to be additional hurdles to use that financing mechanism or use that mechanism up front.
All right. That's as brief as I can be.
I appreciate that. There are no further questions on this bill. We do have 5 more to go. Delegate Weigel.
I'll be brief. So this bill's been out there for a while, not in its amended form, but have any generators come forward expressing, that they like this bill or they won't build a generating plant in Maryland with this bill? Have we heard from anyone? Because I haven't heard from anyone.
We've met with Constellation a multitude of times. Again, we've been working with the Senate, and they've obviously been very focused on their side as far as being business friendly, making sure that we keep it as broad and open as we can. It's almost word for word. So we've met with as many of the interested parties as we could to come up with this, Senate and House language. Brian?
Yeah, I would say in the 3 meetings I've had with potential generators, they understand and respect the expedited CPCN process. I think that they are going to wait for the capacity auction to see if the maths and then whether or not they can actually finance this. And I think the thing that they're most happy with, to probably the utilities' chagrin, is the fact that we're not rate basing a plan. So.
Okay.
Thanks.
You guys are. Go ahead.
I think it's worth remembering, though, also, is that the PJM queue has no gas in it. And so the only way that a gas plant could get built in the state is through PJM's RRI process that they just got through FERC, which is the Reliability Resource Something Initiative. And there's 100, we don't know which, there's 100 plants in that queue trying to get 50 spots. So they're focused on, if they're thinking about Maryland, they're focused on that process and getting through that process because they can't do anything in Maryland until they get through PJM. And their only shot at getting through PJM quickly is the RRI because the queue's closed without gas in it. So I think that it's worth kind of remembering the bigger picture that this is happening in, and how much we can and can't control things in the state. It's not public which ones they are, so we don't know.
Okay,
Just real quick, Mr. Chairman.
okay, Delegate Adams.
So when I was talking about prevailing wage, and my industry's under certain trade classifications, the question is, does the Department of Labor, actually do utility-specific rates, or are they using just generic rates that are, well, in that case, probably highway rates? What I'm being told is that the Department of Labor will not do prevailing wage surveys for utility companies, so we actually get a jurisdictional and/or industry-specific rate. And the follow-up question that is, if we don't think that the Department of Labor is actually getting utility surveys, can we put something in the bill that requires the Department of Labor to go out and survey these utility companies in order to create a industry-specific utility rate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that we're talking about a bill 2 years ago that related to projects in between a private owner and the public utilities.
The underground.
And you were compelling the private owner to pay prevailing wage when they had to connect with.
And there was no prevailing wage set for that, so they used highway rates.
So I actually don't think this is controversial. What I'm saying, if anything, is that if we're going to put prevailing wage on these projects, it needs to be a survey done of the utility companies and the wages they pay so they can set the prevailing wage rate and not use a generic rate, which is what they're currently doing. So that is typical procedure. I'm in the industry. I do prevailing wage jobs. They survey my industry, but not the generic industry of carpentry. They survey my industry. If you're an elevator operator, they survey the elevator operator. What I'm saying is, if we're going to put prevailing wage on these projects, simply survey the utility companies and the wages they pay consistent with the prevailing wage law.
I would just say throughout this, it says that the Department of Labor is responsible for enforcing that, so.
I think we're the legislature and we should say what I just said.
Delegate Adams, I mean, this has been, I would say almost the whole time I've been up here, this has been something. And I think that you rightfully are addressing an issue. I think that Department of Labor has come in here and consistently said, thrown up their hands, we can't set it. But for whatever it's worth, I hear you. Like,
all right.
Seeing no further discussion. Bill 1035.
No, hold on. So, Mr. Chair, we need to add a couple technical corrections. They are solely technical in nature of what has to be amended. So move to amend 7-1209 to clarify that if less than 10 projects apply, they shall all be approved as long as they meet the requirements of that section. Move to amend 7-506.1 to clarify that generators and customers in non-network arrangements will be subject to the same costs that customers in network arrangements are subject to. And then move to make a technical fix on Section 7 of the bill, which should reference 7-1220, not 7-1217. Please move the amendments.
On the amendments, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Move the bill as amended.
On the bill as amended. Any more discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Vice Chair.
Aye.
Delegate Harrison. He is absent. Excuse me. Delegate Boafo. Delegate Howard. No. Delegate Charkoudian. Delegate Rose. Delegate Pruski. Aye. Delegate Fennell. Aye. Delegate Turner. Aye. Delegate Valderrama. Yes. Delegate Chi. Aye. Delegate Frazier-Lago. Aye. Delegate Adams. Aye. Delegate Arentz. No. Delegate Pippi. Aye. Thank you. Delegate Johnson. Aye. Delegate Rogers. Yes. Delegate Ampry. Excuse. Delegate Weibel. Delegate Fisher? Delegate Queen? Delegate Harrison?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Bill moves. All right, next bill is Senate, moving on to Senate Bill 937.
As amended, Senate Bill 937 establishes ratepayer protections related to gas infrastructure investment, trade association fees, and multi-year rate plans, establishes a solicitation process for an expedited certificate of public convenience and necessity, establishes procurements for transmission-level energy storage and nuclear generation, alters certain energy assistance programs, and requires electric companies to develop rate schedules for large load customers. There is one amendment which conforms the Senate bill to the House bill.
Move the amendment.
On the amendment, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. On the bill as amended.
Mr. Chair, I have the same three technical fixes on 1035 we have to make to Senate Bill 937. So move to amend 7-1209 to clarify that if less than 10 projects apply, they shall all be approved as long as they meet the requirements of that section. Move to amend 7-506.1 to clarify that generators and customers in non-network arrangements will be subject to the same costs that customers in network arrangements are subject to, and move to make a technical fix to Section 7 of the bill should reference 7-1220, not 7-1217.
On the amendments, any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. On the bill as amended. Any discussion?
Move the bill as amended.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Vice Chair.
Aye.
Delegate Harrison. Yes. Delegate Boafo. Delegate Howard. No. Delegate Sharkoudian. Yes. Delegate Rose. Delegate Pruski. Delegate Fennell. Delegate Turner. Delegate Valderrama. Yes. Delegate Chi. Delegate Frazier-Odago. Delegate Adams. Delegate Aaron's. Delegate Pippy. Delegate Johnson. Delegate Rogers. Delegate Amprey. Delegate Weibel. Delegate Fisher. Delegate Queen. And Chair votes yes. Bill moves favorable. Next bill, please. We're doing House Bill 1036.
As amended, House Bill 1036 establishes standard siting requirements for solar energy generating stations and energy storage devices, establishes a distributed generation certificate of public convenience and necessity, and requires the Maryland Department of Labor to establish a special solar contractor license. Your reprint reflects 5 amendments. First amendment is technical. The second amendment alters the solar and battery storage requirements under the bill. The third amendment alters the definition of agrivoltaics. The Fourth Amendment requires the Maryland Department of Labor to establish a special solar contractor license and requires the Department of Natural Resources to identify state land suitable for solar development. The Fifth Amendment establishes a distributed generation certificate of public convenience and necessity.
Move the amendments.
On the amendments, are there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. Chair, I also have 2 additional technical verbal amendments. The first is move to amend Section 5 to clarify it is the owner or operator of the solar station meeting the notification and meeting requirements, and move to strike the auto enrollment program and replace it with a study of feasibility and technical barriers to establishing an auto enrollment program. Please move the amendments.
On the amendments, is there any discussion? All in favor of the amendment say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none.
Move the bill as amended.
On the bill as amended, is there any discussion? Delegate Adams.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the percentage under the bill is 5, is it 5%? It is. All right. So obviously the Senate had a well-ordained and orchestrated conversation about how damaging that 5% is. So I'm not going to be brief, I'm not going to repeat that testimony, but be that as it may, that percentage will outstrip by a wide margin the amount of land on the Eastern Shore that will be available for solar siting without local input. I am, for one more year, the chair of the Eastern Shore delegation. I have 4 senators, 12 delegates who are surely all aligned behind the principle that we are not against private property owners doing what they will with their land within the context of planning and zoning, local input, which is why we elect county commissioners and county council members, and those counties are advised by planning and zoning folks. While I understand that our state has lofty goals, okay, and that those are written in stone to the extent that they're in code, and that we have to move forward with some of these projects, I would like to think that at this juncture, the committee and the Maryland General Assembly will at least acknowledge the likelihood that if we move this bill forward with the 5%, that we will be back with me or whoever my version of me is in 2 years with some serious concerns about what's actually happening in our area of the state, which is we are going to have a proliferation of solar. And I do not think that when we created the solar subsidies, when we created these lofty goals for renewable energy, that it was ever considered that the legislature would put such a burden on the Eastern Shore to manage the state's goals. A reminder that the Eastern Shore's industry is agriculture, it is poultry. Agriculture can go away. Poultry can certainly move to another place in our country. If that were to happen, the Eastern Shore will no longer have an industry the way that I understand it. We will become a sanctuary for folks that want to drive from Baltimore, Washington to go visit Ocean City. I'm a fifth-generation Eastern Shoreman. Every secondary and tertiary industry in our state is founded on and exists because of our primary industry, which is agriculture, which is farmland, which is Purdue, Mount Ayr, Amic, which is our men and women-owned chicken houses, families that have lived on the Eastern Shore for generations and established their livelihoods on humble industry that's fed our state well. And so while that 5%, just one number in a bill, may not seem like a big deal because it's just 5%. The testimony coming from my counties is that 5% is equal to 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 acres of land per county. And Mr. Chairman, I'm going to vote no on the bill because of that issue primarily. And I appreciate you giving me a chance to say my piece as the chairman of the Eastern Shore delegation. And thank you.
And I just say, Chris, I appreciate what we've been discussed, and I want to be clear for the record that that 5% is not total land mass of your county. It's for the priority preservation. And we put in so many barriers to try to listen about, the size, limiting, where it's going to be at, the tier one, keeping out of tier 1 or 2 mapped locally growth, keeping out of medium density residential areas or high density or even mixed use. We've made sure that we have, on a state level explained feet between stations, berms, fencing, making sure that we did as much as we can to protect the community. And I'll say it again, and I know you've heard it, there is nobody being forced to put solar on their land. These are landowners who are making a choice. And their choice really is whether they want to continue to farm or whether they want to put solar on their land. So I understand, but again, we're talking 5% of your priority preservation land, not the entire county. And I'm sure you have the math, but we ran the numbers. We understand you dropping it down at 2% basically doesn't get us where we need to go. And these are options. This is not a minimum. We're not forcing anyone to put solar on their land. We just want to make sure that people and landowners that choose to put solar on their land at least have that right. We're protecting a landowner's rights. And I will say, after they hit that 5% on that priority preservation, even those landowners are going to be stuck and they're not going to be able to choose that. That's a negotiation. That is not my goal. That was never my goal, to tell somebody just because your county or Montgomery County has hit 5%, that no other farmer can now choose to stop farming because his kids don't want to farm. I understand, again, this is just, and I understand you protecting your community. We tried our best to listen. We tried to work with MACO. We took as many amendments as we could and still have a viable bill. So thank you very much. Delegate Ahrens.
Briefly, to piggyback off what the delegate said, and I know you talk about 5% of that land, but that's 6,000 acres in Queen Anne's County alone. And I mean, that's our business. We don't have big shopping malls. We don't have the big businesses there. In Kent County, it's 5,000 acres. In Caroline, it's 4,000 acres. That's significant. And I get what you're saying about they have their choice. But when you start looking at doing these things, the farmers started getting nervous, the people start getting nervous, and our whole way of life could change with these type of numbers. I think we could do, so we could let the markets take care of this on their own. If these people want to sell their farms today and rent their farms out, they can do it. Regular farms, any farm can do that today.
But not for solar.
They could if they wanted to do that.
No, that's exactly what my problem is they're not going to be able to, because many people are saying, no, not in ag preservation, not in these farmlands. So the very argument we just heard is, well, they can't do it even if they own their land. That was my problem.
We actually own the land too.
I'm sorry?
We actually own the land too. We paid for that.
Who's the we?
The state.
What?
I'm talking to the chairman. Thank you, though.
So I'm so confused.
When we put land in preservation, that's tax dollars that give them that money.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking.
And so you're saying that you have 120,000 acres of agricultural preserve in your county?
No, yeah.
If 6,000.
6,000 would be the number. Yeah.
And so you have 120,000, and this 6,000 that's going to make all the difference.
My farmers are concerned.
But see, I don't understand it, because your farmers don't have to say yes. This isn't, I just can't grasp onto this. I don't, because they can all say no. Not a single person will be forced to do this. And I'm trying to listen and hear when this happens, when I miss it. What did I miss about farmers getting tricked, hoodwinked? I'm sure you have an answer. But wait. I'm gonna get you. I was just saying, so I'm steadily, because I know Steve's light's so on, I want to make sure. But you're definitely heard. We tried our best. I get it. I don't know who's next. Fisher? Oh, sorry, Pippi.
I'm not trying to directly rebut anything other than just to say and I know what Delegate Fraser-Hidalgo was going to say. The oil companies are subsidized. But the fact of the matter is that solar is heavily subsidized, so it is obviously not a free market. So at some point you get to a large enough subsidy, and any farmer who may love their land and may love to farm it may choose at that point to artificially choose to put solar on it. So I think that's kind of the answer. And to the question of they don't have to do this, well, while it may be true they don't have to, the subsidies are so high that they're making the choice to do so because of the policies of the General Assembly and this committee. And the second thing is, there is no way Delegate Charkoudian and others who love this industry that covering farmland is environmentally correct or in any way, shape, or form good for the environment. It is not. It is common sense that it is not. And it's shameful that the policy of this state is to cover farmland, beautiful farmland, and say that it's environmental. When the policy of this state years ago, as I remember, because I was here, was to put solar panels on impervious surfaces, which did make sense, okay? That did make sense, because it was already impervious. And then under the O'Malley administration, we were told that you shouldn't cover impervious surfaces with anything because we had a rain tax, especially near water, and the Eastern Shore is surrounded by water. So I have news for you. It's not environmental. It's not good for the environment. It's a blight on the farmland on the Eastern Shore and wherever you see it. And I have a direct relationship with a farmer on the Eastern Shore who, sadly, I know very well, who's putting these panels on their farm because the subsidies are so huge, it just makes sense. So, I mean, it's not a surprise I'm voting no against this. And I just want to, but I want to parse the difference. Putting them on top of someone's barn makes perfect sense. Putting them on their rooftop makes perfect sense. Tesla has a shingle that you put on a rooftop. It makes perfect sense, by all means. But at some point, the industry co-opted, I believe, the General Assembly and decided that greed was more important and put them on farms, and I think that's wrong.
Hop in here real quick and just make the point that without the bill, right now it's 100%. We have been knocked all the way down to 5% in the negotiations. So I feel as if, I mean, that's a pretty good win for counties, you know, that frankly, you know, aren't, I guess, as pro-solar. I'm trying to be neutral. I'm not trying to use any kind of, or not against putting more solar. You know, and then I think part of the other argument here is there are counties out there that are, and I'm empathetic to what the two gentlemen over here mentioned. You know, there's counties that are saying, you know, put solar everywhere but my county. And we're knocking them back significantly in the bill too. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just say that, you know, these percentages and these goals are based on today's goals. And I think, you know, part of sort of, you know, defanging the snake, so to speak, not that it's a snake, but that's a kind of a karate fighting term, right? You want to de-weaponize your opponent, so to speak, would be to have accepted a great bill that was presented in this committee that would, by Delegate Grice, that would have removed from the conversation eminent domain. And I know it's a concern. I know it would have put, you know, people's fears a little bit more at, alleviate their fears a little bit more. And I think the delegate that presented that bill was right. The people that are doing this are doing it now. And, you know, sort of the low-hanging fruit has been picked. And, yeah, unfortunately, I do think that potentially in the future, based on the ever-increasing clean energy goals of future administrations, that we could absolutely see that eminent domain and those type of things in play. So.
And again, I
But I appreciate the work that you do. I really do.
It's just the eminent domain thing. So here's the problem, guys. If there's a national emergency, if we get put off the grid, if the grid fails, something happens, and we have to do something, that's the only reason that eminent domain would even be utilized. I am terrified of the fear-mongering that, well, right now, we're just getting the ones that want it, but next, we're going to go and move in the ones that don't. I mean, there's nowhere in this country have I seen that happen where people were forced to have solar on their land. And kind of what Delegate Fisher says, doesn't sound like you got to force them. The money's there. So you're not going to have to trick them. You're not going to have to force them. They're going to want to do it. And I appreciate you speaking for your people, so I'm not questioning you. Right. But it is a frustration to hear this, I've got to take your land. But no. I'm going to give you enough money. You're going to want to give me your land. So I understand that argument. But if you say for now, at what point will it not make money? And that's the thing. And remember, the rest of the bill, we just went over a bill, and it didn't depend on solar at all. Our plan, including natural gas, including nuclear. So why would we want to take other people's land when we're also doing those things? And I would ask, not for you, but to the people that are talking to you, remember, we're not just focused on solar. This is just a part of it.
Well, we would hope that natural gas comes to Maryland. We're not going to know until October, when nobody in the generation side has, from my knowledge, talked to any member of the General Assembly with any type of plan. Or, I mean, that bill takes effect. When does that last bill that we just passed take effect? October?
June.
Okay, so they would have to be working on ROI and incentives and studies now, right now. So I would think that they would have come forward at this point, but
they probably wouldn't know what the language looked like first, but I got you. But my point is, you may not be incorrect, and we will revisit when we need to. However, all that aside, there's no intention anybody sitting in this body to rob someone of their most sacred possession,
And
which
that's
is
why we
land.
should, and that's why we should have passed the bill. So, and.
Because I just explained why, though.
No,
I explained why in an
believe you.
emergency. I explained why.
I believe
The
you.
reason we couldn't, because if there is a national emergency and the grid goes down and we have to rush out and protect Marylanders in this state, then we need that power that
And
we've always had.
there are emergency clauses that would have allowed us to do that. This legislature could have been called into an emergency session to allow us to do that. So we're not, I understand what you're saying, but I just, based on the powers of this legislature, the emergency clauses that we could enact, the things that we could do, if that were to ever happen, I just don't see why we didn't move that bill and sort of just remove it from the conversation.
Well, then they'd still be worried about us throwing spiders in their house until we write that in there too. Because that's the problem, what I'm saying about fear mongering. Or I start letting leopards, I can promise to not let leopards out as well.
This removes
because
the fear.
Yeah, so I have to keep writing all these other fears that'll come up next. So that's fine, but I understand your point. I don't know who's next.
Pippi's been waiting for 2 hours.
I'm gonna get Doug Pippi.
Thank you. So there's a lot of opposition in the testimony section. I'm sure everybody's read that. One of the letters was from Frederick County, where I represent. I'm the chairman there. And it talks about notice. Was that taken out or restored in the amendment?
I'm sorry, I was being bothered.
So, that's funny. Hey, I'm noticing a trend. No, so look, currently there's a 90-day period where you have to give notice to locals if you're looking to put one of these projects. So that was, I understand, taken out in the bill. Has that been restored with the amendments?
So there was a clarifying amendment because there was some confusion as if this was a separate application process when it's not. So the CPCN process, the Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, already requires all those notifications and meetings. And this is documentation supplemental to that process. So it was a redundant provision that was unnecessary because in order to build, you have to meet the citing provisions in this bill, and you still have to have the CPCN, or you still have to have the alternate process, or you still have to have that site development plan that the local jurisdictions require. There is a requirement that if it's built in an overburdened or underserved community, you have to have 2 meetings within that community. That requirement is still in the bill.
So how many days does the current CPCN process require you to notify the locals when you're doing one of these projects?
I believe it's 90, but I will allow Ben to.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Welcome to the committee, Ben.
Thank you.
How many days does the CPCN application process require you to notify, I guess, locals within the impacted areas?
Right. So they have to have a public meeting 60 days ahead of a filing with us. They have to notify us and the PPRP, so Power Plant Research Program, and the counties 90 days ahead of time. So they're supposed to be doing work with the counties also 90 days ahead of time. After that, I would have to go check statute, but that's what I'm aware of.
So 90 days is the county, 60 days the public meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Well, and so the bill as originally, well, let me stop. I think there was a 90-day requirement for a public notice of 90 days, and that was struck in the bill. And I know you're saying it was struck because it was redundant. But he's saying 60 days for the public and then 90 days for the county. Public's what I'm concerned with, right? Because I'm dealing with a CPCN nightmare in my own neck of the woods. And I think the most egregious part of what I'm dealing with was people felt that they weren't notified in a timely manner. And so I'd be very leery to strike something reducing a notice to the public, especially for something that they may hate. And there's plenty of negative feedback about what this bill would do. And look, the purpose of the bill seems to me to force up to 6% of land to be covered in solar panels, is basically what it comes across. And they can, wordsmith it any way they want. But 6% of whatever the percentage, Well, it's 6% of whatever would qualify to be used, right?
No, it's just the average, no, it's just part of your priority reserve. More than 6% your whole count, or 5%, that's just your priority preservation. It can still build.
Or more, yeah, I got you. No, what I'm getting at is that this is supposed to reduce roadblocks to, right. And even if there's a consensus locally where people may not want these projects, this is to overcome that consensus of opposition as well, right?
We have a CPCM process that allows local input for them.
Okay.
And I think you got an answer to a timeline.
I just want to clarify, so the language that was struck was the original subsection D. This language was lifted directly from the CPCN language. And that's why it was struck, because it was redundant, because you already have to still go through the CPCN project. There was no specific 90-day requirement in this language. It was just a language that was already in section 7-207 of the Public Utilities article.
You talking about the COMAR 20.790105 requires a applicant to notify the local jurisdiction of at least 90 days?
Are you, I believe that you're talking about House Bill 1035?
No? 1036.
What page?
So I'm looking at a testimony from Frederick related to 1036.
But what's actually in the bill?
Well, that's why I asked about the amendment, because.
But what I'm saying, it didn't strip it because it wasn't every day. It was exactly the same thing they just told you. 60 days for the public, 90 days for the counties. And honestly, counties also kind of public.
Okay.
So, but yeah,
All right, well, that was my question, so, okay. Thank you.
I will be brief. Something I was thinking of, since we purchased this land, $900 million, it says, I'm reading about Melf. When they go out and use this preserved land for solar, how are the dollars distributed? That property's been purchased with tax dollars. We've given the farmer dollars. They're going to now put that into service as solar. How is that all worked out?
I'm sorry, can you clarify, who's purchasing the land?
Well, when we do put land to preservation, those farmers are given money for that land.
They're giving the value.
The value, correct.
Because again, so you're saying the farmers are paid the full value of that land, but they're still allowed to own it.
They're allowed to own it, but under MELF, it's set for farming. That's why we do that, to keep this forever in farming. How did we work that out in the beginning? Because now we're changing the use of that farm.
Sorry, Delegate, just to clarify, any properties that are under easement, solar can't be developed on. So priority preservation areas are just land specifically zoned for agricultural farming, but any land that is like under a MELF easement, no solar can be built on that land at all.
So what you're talking about is the easement.
Yeah.
We're not building solar on easement. These are zone.
Zone, okay, that's where the confusion was. Okay, that's what, I didn't get it. Thank you.
Delegate Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know you were talking about like the fear mongering, and I'm not going to repeat what Jesse said because we're dealing with the same problem, but our people were very, very upset because that particular company came in right out of the box, first thing on television, and said, we're going to take your land. So we're very sensitive to that.
I get it. I understand. That's why.
Yeah, but I'm not trying to be fear-mongering. I'm being honest. Okay.
Delegate Fraser-O'Donnell, last question.
Thank you. I just want to make it very clear, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding in the agricultural preservation area, and I think it's really important to clear that up. For the very first time, for those that have agricultural preservation areas, for the very first time in Maryland state law, 95% of that preserved area will be protected. It will be in Maryland state law as protected to not have solar developed on it. So I think it's important to like kind of flip this around and put it on its head a little bit. For us in Montgomery County, we have 93,000 acres, 86 something would be available, but that would be protected. That means, I think it's very important for people to understand, that means that 95% of that area can't be developed for solar. And if you don't have that in state law anywhere, which we don't, then what that means is that for the very first time, you're getting protections. These preservation areas are getting protections that they never, ever, ever had. And the reason being is because state law supersedes county law. So, right? So it's important to understand that I hope that makes some sense for you to go home with. 95% is preserved. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. No, okay, guys, I get it. So we are on House Bill 1036. The amendments have all been moved. Do I need to do a roll call, Pippi? On the favorable as amended, Mr. Vice Chair.
Aye.
Delegate Harrison. Yes. Delegate Boafo. Aye. Delegate Howard. Delegate Charkoudian. Yes. Delegate Rose. Delegate Pruski. Delegate Fennell. Delegate Turner. Delegate Valderrama. Delegate Chi. Delegate Frazier-Dago. Delegate Adams. Delegate Arentz. Delegate Pippi. Delegate Johnson. Delegate Rogers. Delegate Ampry. Delegate Weibel. Delegate Fisher. Delegate Queen.
Yes.
Bill moves. Thank you. The next bill is Senate Bill 931.
As amended, Senate Bill 931 establishes standard siting requirements for solar energy generating stations and energy storage devices, establishes a distributed generation certificate of public convenience and necessity, and requires the Maryland Department of Labor to establish a special solar contractor license. There's one amendment which makes the Senate bill substantially similar to the House bill.
Wait, what?
Move the amendment.
On the amendments, is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none.
Mr. Chair, I want to make the same verbal amendments that I made previously. I want to move to amend to add a study on the feasibility of a community solar auto enrollment program.
On the amendment, is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. On the bill as amended.
Move the bill as amended.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Aye.
Delegate Harrison. Delegate Boafo. Delegate Howard. Delegate Charkoudian. Delegate Rose. Delegate Pruski. Delegate Fennell. Delegate Turner. Delegate Valderrama. Delegate Chi. Delegate Frazier-Dago. Delegate Adams. Delegate Arentz. Delegate Pippi. Delegate Johnson. Delegate Rogers. Delegate Ampry. Delegate Weibel. Delegate Fisher. Delegate Queen. Chair votes yes. Bill moves. Next bill, please. House Bill, it should be House Bill 1039.
37.
Nope, 37.
As amended, House Bill 1037 establishes the Strategic Energy Planning Office within the Public Service Commission, requires the office to submit a certain risk report every 3 years, and establishes certain stakeholder processes related to the report. In your reprint, Amendment 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 clarifies the timelines, information, and stakeholder input required for a risk report submitted by the office.
Move the amendment.
On the amendments, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none.
Move the bill as amended.
On the bill as amended, we have some discussion. Brief indulgence, it was amended down.
Yeah, what's it? 909. I just want to make sure I get you the right answer.
What?
I think up here they still have the same.
Is it? You might not.
Yeah, all right. So we'll just go off of the original. Sure. So, I mean, it's roughly 5 million. It's 4.5 million for 26, 6 million, give or take, there from there on.
Delegate Weibel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I did have an amendment prepared for this bill as well. This, the Strategic Energy Planning Office, I felt was most appropriate to be funded by the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. Because what we're doing is, I think the fiscal note was high as $9 or $10 million annually, which will be passed on to the ratepayer. So it's going to actually have the effect of increasing rates. So I thought it would be best if we use that fund to pay for the costs of the planning office.
So I would think, Delegate Wadley, I fully recognize that take. I think the way we're looking at it, you just hit my little. I think the way that we are looking at all three bills is in totality. And so just off of the reconciliation portion, off of 1035, and removing that, it is $40 million for BGE that the ratepayers are going to save. Additionally, they're going to save what we believe is going to be $200 million going forward off of those multi-year rate plans. And so we think that this is money well spent long-term so that we have the data in-house so we don't get caught off guard or reliant upon PJM, when we're trying to set the state policies going forward.
But the 40 million is a one-time, right? That only for a year?
No, well, yes, correct. The 40 million is a one-time reconciliation for, is it last year? Yeah, last year. And then going forward, in theory, there would still be reconciliations, even though we just banned them, that the ratepayers, in theory, would save. Additionally, just by the very nature of making it more challenging to get a multi-year rate plan and then get those multi-year rate plans without a reconciliation, there is significant rate savings in that as well. Ben, did I miss anything?
And additionally, one of the big issues is if it's funded through the CEF, that means the governor controls it. We
Well, he
wanted
does
this to be a
now.
standalone independent. It won't.
He appoints the director.
Apologize?
Doesn't the governor appoint the director? under
They're
the-
still an independent standalone.
Not if the director is appointed by the governor. I mean, isn't he going to control the direction of the office?
It's like the equivalent of, it's like PSC. It's a distinction between appointments and an agency. So the agencies that have secretaries that answer to him, he controls that. But like the PSC, the Office of People's Counsel is appointed by AG, they're independent agencies. So while he appoints them, he doesn't control them. They don't go to him for permission to do things. I think that's the distinction.
But if they don't follow his direction, doesn't he just have the ability to
No,
replace them?
he does not. They're there for 5 years, much like PSC. They're not.
The bill says he can only do that. He's only allowed, the bill explicitly says he's
Yes.
only allowed to
You're
do
right.
that if there's like malfeasance or
Correct.
something. He can't do
Okay,
that.
so
Once they're appointed,
how
they're-
does the process work then for the appointment? Is there a recommendation or approval by someone else? or-
Senate, right?
I think it's the Senate.
It's
Goes
the
to the
same,
Senate.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
it
there's
goes to the Senate.
the governor recommends or.
It's the same as the
and
Public
then-
Service Commission
Yeah, it's like
appointments.
the PSC. That's the goal, is to set a align it with the PSC, who once they're appointed, they're on their own. They're not controlled by the governor.
All right, I still think the C fund is most appropriate for funding this. I see your point.
I got you.
But it just, I think that was the purpose of the C fund.
Gotcha.
And this, if it works, has bigger potential to change the direction of the state as far as energy resources than any of the other grants that we're giving and stuff like that, I believe.
I got you. Thank you. Delegate Pippy.
Are we on 1037 or not yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just looking at I think we talked about it, but some of the folks that would contribute, is there anyone here from the industries? If we're trying to grow natural gas or nuclear, do we want input from those folks that we're trying to attract or grow, or was there any consideration?
I believe
given?
as drafted, there is a stakeholder process that would basically be set up by the Public Service Commission. And the Public Service Commission would be handling all that stakeholder input. For the office itself, they'll create their risk report, and there's a requirement for stakeholder input. And while the office does not have to take that input into account, it has to make that input public. So whatever anyone that wants to provide input in, they'll be able to do. And I think Ben will be able to better clarify.
So on that stakeholder input, there's three touch points for stakeholder input that's actually in the legislation. One is that up front, when they're developing the inputs and assumptions for their models, they will have this office will have a stakeholder group to solicit feedback, work with parties. They will ultimately decide what will inform their modeling, but they will work with others to determine what they think is appropriate. They'll do their modeling, they'll create their report. Once that report has been published, they're supposed to convene another set of stakeholders. The same stakeholders can choose to participate to discuss if there are risks identified, that they will work with the basically they will identify ways for the state to solve that risk if they think it is necessary to do so. And then finally, the commission is supposed to once every 3 years effectively facilitate a proceeding to go through this report and from the commission's perspective, determine if there's anything that we would take to require the utilities to do. And then it also is an opportunity for the office to also, in a more formal setting, solicit feedback as well.
So real quick, so the 5 groups that are named in here, is it 5? Yeah. The Maryland Energy Administration, the Commission, the Power Plant Research Program, Maryland Clean Energy Department. I mean, that's kind of like stacked against natural gas and you know what I mean? I mean, I know that we're going to try to make nuclear clean, but I'm just wondering if the goal is actually to attract natural gas and others into our state. We have a commission here that's putting together a long-term plan, and it's going to be stacked with people that probably view things a certain way and or may not be open. I mean, give you an example. No disrespect to the executive director of the Maryland Energy Administration, but he hates nuclear.
Stakeholder input.
You know, he's on the record for hating nuclear his whole career. He's made it a mission. You know, that would be my concern, is why wouldn't we expand this to make it more objective if we actually want to have a change in trajectory versus the current path that we're on, which we've all acknowledged now ain't working.
Right. I think the 5 that you listed is basically telling you, these state agencies that exist, you definitely need to help this group. There's nothing, that stakeholder process is not exclusive.
It's not limited
to anyone.
That's what I'm saying. It is not limited. There's it's no exclusion. There's no limit on stakeholder input. Period.
Well, but why, it says shall, right? There's a word shall in there. In order to carry out the requirements of subtitle, the office shall collaborate with. It doesn't, so everybody else is a may, right? We may collaborate with people in the industry that we actually want to attract in Maryland. We may, but they don't have to. I mean, we could certainly add them in there, or you could add a number 6 saying representatives of the industry, so that we actually have real input, because if they come back and they say, look, like what you're proposing will not work, and no one will come here.
It just, again, it's kind of, they can, I guess you're assuming that they're going to be working in opposite to state goals and kind of doing whatever they want to do, versus why we actually set them up to look at all goals and horizons to map out the best way possible. I'm presuming they're going to actually do their job right. Therefore, they will be reaching out to the nuclear folks. They're going to be reaching out to natural gas. They're going to try to find that, because that's they're being tasked to do.
Yeah, but 4 of the 5 folks on this group are going to have zero interest in expanding natural gas or nuclear in our state. I mean, only just based on their own actions.
So Delegate 7-1204 of this new bill, it is a shall, that they shall conduct a stakeholder process. So just how they shall collaborate with these agencies, they shall solicit stakeholder input, and there's no stakeholder is anyone that wants to participate.
I mean, I'm just going by what I read here, you know.
But he just read it to you.
Well, listen, I don't need it to be read to me.
No, I don't mean it that way. Sorry, I didn't mean it that way. I meant that there's more to just what you're reading. There's the other side, too, of the shall, you know, get input from other stakeholders.
So it seems that we're prioritizing those 5 groups, and maybe we're not prioritizing anybody else. You know, so if you disagree on that interpretation, I get it. But the fact that they are delineated in there and they're listed and no one else is listed means that they seem to be more important potentially than the other stakeholders, in my opinion. So, thank you.
Delegate Aaron's?
I guess I don't see anything in here like the mission statement, if you will, of this group, because where's the ratepayer play in all this? What are we doing to consider the ratepayer? If the intent is to, what the priority, the PSC has made clear their priority is going to be what they're going to do. And when I look at this bill, I sit down and say, this is an excellent bill if you want to get a future plan for the state, if you're putting a package together. However, I'm not seeing where this thing isn't biased to what the delegate's just talking about. We're focused on one area. There's nothing in here. I didn't see anything in it, and I didn't read the whole thing page to page, but I don't think anything in there is about scrutinizing Reggie and things like those types of programs, where the dollars are going, see where the dollars are going, how we're doing that. Are they considering the ratepayer in this as one of the top priorities, or are we just going head on into the renewables and nothing else? Because it sounds like that's the way we're geared.
So, and then as brief reconciling, when they're developing their scenarios, their forecasting modeling, they have to consider multiple scenarios, including current state policy, changes at the federal level, a bunch of different scenarios which would require them to scrutinize any political decisions that are currently being made.
And I appreciate that, but even in the joint hearing, I asked the chairman about where's the ratepayer in all this, and he was never really, but I said, what position does a ratepayer play in this decision? And that's something we're getting hammered with now. And I appreciate the chairman's comments. He's taken a lot of time to talk about this. We have to do something because we need to get our energy production up. And I get that, and it's going to cost money. But the path that I'm seeing is more we're going to go all solar, no matter what we try to do. It talks to that, we're sitting back talking about ways of replacing anything in gas if it comes out to gas. And if there's an option 4-to-1, those types of things are saying we're going after just solar. We're not considering the cost and the impact on the ratepayer. If you want to look at the ratepayer, you got to get rid of things like Reggie. You got to get rid of Reggie's coming out. There's reports that thing's negative to us now. We're no longer appreciating the CO2 reduction. It's actually on the other side of that. Just one opinion, but where is the ratepayer in all this? And I'm not seeing that, and I don't feel comfortable personally with the PSC running this because they are picked by the governor and the governor's way. He picks the chairman. Well, he's picked by the governor, and that you know what? When I pick a chairman, I'm usually picking a direction.
So again, to your point, the first thing is I hope that you see all three of these bills moving at the same time. So when you're talking about all you see is solar, I've done everything in my power to make sure that's not all we do. And I wanted to make it very clear when their job, and I understand your distrust. I get your question. I have utmost confidence that the way this has been designed, the way their mission statement isn't the all solar or all offshore wind. It literally is multiple scenarios, design multiple scenarios. So at the end of the day, we get to come back reading their reports and go, okay, this is the direction we are going to take as a state. So I understand your point and I understand your distrust, but I'm just saying I have the utmost faith in the way this is set up that is not going to be the case, merely because they've been appointed by the governor. But thank you. Okay. Seth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So talking about the ratepayer, the one-time $40 million is about $6.55, if I'm doing my math correctly. And then the $200 million.
I didn't hear what you said.
I'm sorry? The one-time $40 million rebate is about $6.55 per 6.1, based on $6.1 million, yeah, Maryland's rounding up. And then
my vice chair is obviously following the numbers exactly.
Yeah, I can see that. And then $200 million is $32.78. How is that divvied out? I mean, is that based on usage? Is that just a rebate that's given to every Marylander on their bill?
Just ratepayers.
So this is going back to 1035.
Yes.
Well, you had just mentioned it a little bit.
Yeah. So you're right. I would say twofold. Those numbers that you are referencing are savings in future rate cases. So they're not going to get that money back. That is less that is going to go onto somebody's bill in the future. I think not to conflate it with the ACP return. Right. That is going to go back onto individuals' bills in two chunks. I think it's $80 on average, $80. Totally depends on the size and what region you're in. But that'll read, what's the new language, Dwayne?
What do you call it?
The legislative hardship relief credit.
So it'll be two $80 refunds.
Two $40.
$40 refunds.
On ACP money being returned that is not utilized back to the ratepayer.
And based on legislation, how are we divvying that up, so to speak? I mean, is that based on usage? Is it based on?
Yes, volumetric.
So people that are using more will see a larger return than people that are using less.
Correct.
Okay.
Only for residential.
Okay. Interesting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I just wanted to point out some of the answers, I think, to some of the questions that were asked. First, I wanted to point out that in addition to the 5 state agencies that are part of the conversation, it also says the office shall coordinate with the commission to establish procedures and rules to obtain information from electric companies and gas companies necessary to accomplish it. So the industry and the utilities are involved. And then I also wanted to highlight, and I won't go through all the places, but just right below that, this is on page 7, is one example, and there's several more throughout, where the task is to identify ways to save ratepayers money. So rates and costs come in throughout this. So for example, this number 3 on that same page 7, the solutions identified in the risk report shall seek to minimize the growth of the cost of electricity or lower the cost of electricity. I won't bore you with all the places that it says that, but I just want to highlight that I do think that this legislation, in addition to being highly technical and looking at power flow analyses and risk reports and making sure there's sufficient electricity on the grid, it also highlights in multiple places that it's supposed to be done in a lower cost way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Seeing no further questions, I do appreciate everybody's input. We're going to move on to, I believe that we already moved the amendments, correct? House Bill 1037. It's favorable with amendments is the motion. Mr. Vice Chair.
Aye.
Delegate Harrison. Delegate Boafo. Delegate Howard. Delegate Charkoudian. Delegate Rose. Delegate Pruski. Delegate Fennell. Delegate Turner. Delegate Valderrama. Delegate Chi. Delegate Frazier-Odago. Delegate Adams. Delegate Aaron's. Delegate Pippy. Delegate Johnson. Delegate Rogers. Delegate Ampry. Delegate Weibel. Delegate Fisher. Delegate Queen. And the chair votes yes.
Senate Bill 909 establishes the Strategic Energy Planning Office within the Public Service Commission, requires the office to submit a certain risk report every 3 years, and establishes certain stakeholder processes related to the report. There's one amendment. It conforms the Senate bill to the House bill.
Move the amendment.
On the amendment, is there any discussion? Hearing none.
Move the bill as amended.
The bill's amendment, is there any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Vice Chair.
Aye.
Mr. Harrison. Ms. Harrison, sorry. I'm sorry, hon. Delegate Harrison. Delegate Boafo. Delegate Howard. Delegate Charkoudian. Delegate Rose. Delegate Pruski. Delegate Fennell. Delegate Turner. Delegate Valderrama. Delegate Chi. Delegate Frazier-Odago. Delegate Adams. Delegate Aaron's. Delegate Pippy. Delegate Johnson. Delegate Rogers. Delegate Ampry. Delegate Weibel. Delegate Fisher. Delegate Queen. Bill moves. Before we're almost done, guys. Give me a few more minutes. We still have to vote concurrences. First concurrence is House Bill 78. Ben, by the way, thank you very much for all your input. I really appreciate that. Thank you. House Bill 78, please.
House Bill 78, State Commission of Real Estate Appraisers and Appraisal Management.
Sorry, the mic's on.
Wait a minute. We'll wait for the mic.
Okay. House Bill 78, State Commission of Real Estate Appraisers, Appraisal Management Companies, and Home Inspectors, Sunset Extension and Report. The Senate amendments change the termination date from 2031 to 2029.
Move not to concur.
Second.
Motion not to concur. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can I ask a question? Okay. Did it extend longer or shorter?
Senate went shorter.
They went shorter.
5 years?
They went 3.
5 years to 3 years.
Why?
I don't know. That's why we didn't concur. All right, so the motion not to concur. All in favor say aye. All opposed? All present voted aye. Next bill, please.
What's the number? I don't have a list. What's the
99.
I apologize. Go ahead. 99 is the next one.
House Bill 99, Anne Arundel County Class A and Class D licenses, population ratio quota.
Move to concur.
Motion's concur. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All in favor of motion to concur. Next bill, please. House Bill 107.
House Bill 107 is Consumer Protection Automatic Renewals. The Senate amendments just conformed it to the House bill.
Move to concur.
Motion's concur. All in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. All present voted to concur. Next bill, please. 193.
House Bill 193, Uninsured Employers Fund Additional Assessment on Awards and Settlements Amount. The Senate amendments conform the House bill to the Senate bill.
Move to concur.
Motion concur. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. All present vote to concur. Next bill, please.
Is it 208?
It's 208.
House Bill 208, Consumer Protection, False Advertising Digital Goods. The amendments make the violation an unfair, abusive, and deceptive trade practice, but exempts a violation from the private right of action and criminal penalties in the Consumer Protection Act.
Move to concur.
Motion to concur. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Concurrence moves. Next bill, please.
House Bill 1347. The Senate amendments just conform the House bill to the Senate bill that we passed.
Move to concur.
Motion to concur. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion to concur. All right, guys, I know we took a lot of time. See everybody out, I guess, 4. So hopefully you guys got some food. Thank you guys very much. And thank my Republican colleagues for the very spirited debate. I'm sure we'll have part 2 and 3 tomorrow. Oh, yeah. I love that. I'd rather you not put me in that position again.